Look at this building. It was built in 1893. Now look at this one. Built in 1897. And this one. Same era. Now, tell me what civilization had the architectural knowledge, the workforce, the material science, and the artistic tradition to build structures like these in a period when most of the people who supposedly built them had just finished living in log cabins. The official history says, industrialization. Ambition. American ingenuity. But there's a problem. The buildings in these photos are not in New York or Chicago or London. Some of them are in cities that were supposedly frontier settlements 20 years before these photos were taken. And many of them no longer exist. They were demolished. Quickly. Quietly. And with almost no historical record of why. Before we go further, let's establish what Tartaria actually was, because it's not a conspiracy theory. It's historical record that has been largely removed from modern education. From the 1300s through the late 1700s, European maps consistently showed a vast territory called Tartaria, or Grand Tartary, covering most of Central Asia and Siberia. At its peak, Tartaria appeared on maps as one of the largest empires on Earth. It appeared in Encyclopedia Britannica's first edition, published in 1771. It had multiple subdivisions: Muscovite Tartary, Chinese Tartary, Independent Tartary. It was documented by European travelers, traders, and explorers. And then, around the early 1800s, it disappeared from maps. From encyclopedias. From historical records. Not gradually. Quickly. In the 1771 Britannica, Tartaria has a full multi-page entry. In the 1800s editions, it's gone. The mainstream explanation is that it was a geographic term, not a political entity, a broad label for tribal territories that were eventually consolidated into Russia, China, and the Ottoman Empire. But here's what that explanation doesn't address. The architectural anomaly. Between roughly 1850 and 1900, cities across North America and Europe built structures that remain among the most technically complex and ornate ever constructed. These structures share several characteristics that don't fit the official timeline. 1. Material science. The stone, concrete, and iron work in 19th century World's Fair buildings used techniques and mixture ratios that weren't officially developed until decades later. Multiple civil engineers who have analyzed surviving structures have noted this in peer-reviewed papers. 2. Scale. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, the White City, contained 200 buildings, the largest of which seated 5,000 people, all built in less than 2 years. By thousands of workers who, per census records, had virtually no construction training. With tools that were, by modern standards, primitive. 3. Uniformity. The architectural style, now called Beaux-Arts, appeared simultaneously across dozens of cities on multiple continents. Not gradually, as styles typically spread. Simultaneously. 4. Demolition. Nearly all of these buildings were demolished within 20 years of construction. The official reason, temporary structures. But photographic records show buildings with foundations 30 feet deep. You don't build a 30-foot foundation for a temporary structure. Here's where it gets harder to explain. Across dozens of cities, London, Paris, Chicago, New York, St. Louis, San Francisco, there are buildings where the ground floor is partially or completely underground. The windows are below street level. The doors open into the earth. This is documented. You can see it in photographs. You can see it in person in cities that haven't been fully renovated. The mainstream explanation, landfill and grade raising. Cities raised their street levels deliberately in the 19th century to improve drainage. This is true in some cases. Chicago raised its street grade by 12 feet in the 1850s. This is documented. But the pattern is global. And in cities where no documented street grade raising occurred, the buried lower floors remain unexplained. Some researchers have proposed, And this is where we move from documented anomaly into hypothesis, that these buildings weren't built in the 19th century. They were inherited from a preceding civilization that was largely wiped out, possibly by a catastrophic event, sometime in the 1700s to early 1800s. This hypothesis, sometimes called the mud flood theory, points to a specific piece of evidence, the 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia, which caused the year without a summer in 1816. Global crop failure. Mass death. Disruption of trade routes across the entire northern hemisphere. The argument is that a catastrophic event, or series of events, around this period wiped out a significant portion of the global population and the civilization they had built, and that the 19th century rise of civilization wasn't a rise at all. It was a recovery. And the recovery involved suppressing, demolishing, and rewriting what came before. We're not telling you Tartaria was a global empire with free energy and anti-gravity. That's not where the documented evidence points. What the documented evidence points to is this. There was a large, sophisticated civilization, or set of civilizations, that occupied much of the northern hemisphere in the period before what we call the Industrial Revolution. That civilization built things that are official history attributes to the Industrial Revolution. And the record of that civilization was, at minimum, significantly reduced in the early 19th century. Whether that was deliberate erasure or the natural result of catastrophic population loss, the outcome is the same. We have a 50-year window of history, roughly 1780 to 1830, that is anomalously sparse in documentation, anomalously dense in physical evidence we don't have good explanations for, and anomalously absent from modern curricula. The buildings are still there. Some of them. The foundations are underground. The records are gone. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's an observation. What explains it is the question that mainstream history hasn't answered. Next week we're going through the specific architectural evidence, the Chicago World's Fair, the St. Louis Exposition, and the building in your own city that doesn't fit the official timeline. Subscribe. This one goes deep.